Okay, call to order our special City Council workshop meeting of May 16th. Second item on the agenda is presentation discussion of mid-year budget.
Kim has some documents that she's going to hand out to everybody.
There he is. Looks like we're in the red.
We are.
That's why we hired you to fix that.
That's all we're going to do. Okay, and I think we're going to put them up on the screen as well.
Here we go.
The first one is a review of where we were at mid-year. And we talked about it earlier meeting, but I just wanted to do it as a refresher. When we got to mid-year, we took our year-to-date and then had each department do a forecast without any changes, what it would be at the end of this budget year. And in the general fund, we started the year with $380,000. I'm gonna round these numbers off, and we were projecting to make 11.1 million in revenue. So our total funds were available were 11.5. Our expenditures were going to be 11,300,000, which meant that our ending balance would be 184,000. But if you look at the fire department, it was going to be a negative 102. So when you take into consideration, we'd have to move that 102 from the general fund. Our general fund would, with no changes, would end up with a balance of just under $82,000 for an $11 million budget. General fund, we were projecting to spend almost $200,000 more in expenses than the revenue we were taking in. So we didn't have a balanced budget in any of these primary operating funds. A rule of thumb is we try to keep a $500,000 balance in that fund at the end of the year, and you can see we have 81,000 when we transfer over to the fire department. The general fund stabilization fund has 995,000 in it, but that's a little misleading because the funds from the Mumford concert that is been pledged to match for the TAP project downtown, that sets in was put in the stabilization fund. So there's 206,000 set in the stabilization fund that is earmarked for the TAP project, which is the downtown streetscape project along Division from Harrison to Oklahoma.
Cancel it.
So 789,000 is really what we have in the stabilization fund. If you look at the GPWA fund, again, starting with a balance of 678,000, revenue of just under 8 million, expenditures of almost 8.3. So the fund balance would have gone from 678 to 365,000, and we would have spent 312,000 more than we would have took in this budget year. Again, try to have a $500,000 balance. We would have only had 365, and the GPWA stabilization fund has 512,000. Fire department started with $22,000 this budget year. Projected revenue over 2.5, expenditures of almost 2.7. So our ending funding balance would have been 102,000 to the negative. And so we would have, of course you can't do that, so we would have had to transfer additional money from the general fund. So all in all, those three major operating funds we were projecting to spend $633,000 more than our revenue. So you can't do that very many years or you'd be bankrupt. A couple of major items, of course, this current budget year, there was an agreement with the school district where we forego the utility cost to the school district, and that was about a $95,000 loss in revenue. And then the traditional $66,000 that they contributed to two SOR, school resource officers, we did not collect that this year either. And then transferring mid-year 411 water customers to rural water. When you look at the difference between our retail revenue we would generate and what we will get now through wholesale of the water at bulk rate, we'll lose $75,000 for 6 months or $150,000 for a full year.
But the good news is the alternative would have been millions of dollars out of pocket had we not got that deal done. Let me ask you a quick question before we move on, if you don't, just real
Sure.
fast. On the stabilization fund, because we changed that last year to be with a new ordinance to make that $1 million. I was under the impression that we were at the million. I guess 995 is close to the million, but I wasn't under the impression that that 206 was part of that whatsoever.
I understand, but
Well, this
the
is
case.
news to me right now.
I understand, but that is the case.
But is it news to everybody else, or am I the only one out there? You knew?
I didn't, no.
No, I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
I didn't know where they placed it. I knew we had that money. I didn't know where.
That we won that
What
grant,
account it was.
but before we were gonna come up with the matching account.
That's what I thought. I thought we were at the almost $1 million in the stabilization, but that's including 200,000 of this other deal.
Correct.
So it was a smoke and mirror deal, huh?
Never cared for that deal to begin with. I think we cancel that.
It's not
The
that easy.
streetscape.
Yeah, the streetscape thing.
Well, you know, we made decisions based on certain information given, which is kind of like the pool thing, and the information given was we had $1 million in there and we don't.
Yeah.
We're 200,000 short of that. So the question is, would we have made the same decision on the streetscape knowing that we were 200,000 short
In the hole.
in the stabilization fund? I don't know. I might not have made
Well,
that.
and we'll have a chance to revisit that. I don't know if that's a decision we want to try to make tonight.
No. I was just I was just wanting to clarify that, you know, that,
It is misleading.
yeah, very.
That's why I wanted to point it out to you all so that you're aware that that money is sitting in the stabilization.
We're right here. Just, Jim, you know what we're talking about, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, the next sheet that we will go over, this is the general fund, and what we've done here is try to give you a forecast. You can see the actual for FY16, the budget for FY17, the adjusted estimate, once we have done the realignment of some of our expenses and adjustments that we'll go over at the end. And then, because if we do any adjustments now, we really, like if you don't fill a position or if you don't, if you reduce a position, there's only 4 months left in a year, so you don't get the full benefit. So what we try to do is do a projected FY18 next year's budget to give you some idea of what the impact would be for a full 12 months. One thing I would like to point out, this trend didn't start this budget year. If you look at the general fund in FY 2016, we spent $375,000 more than we took in. So we were a negative, we were not a balanced budget even back last budget year in FY 16. So that, the problem didn't just start this year.
No.
If you look at our budget, it was projected that we would have $11.7 million in revenue and $11.7 million in expenditures. Problem was, some of that revenue was not, would not come to reality. It was over projected, and some of the expenditures were under projected probably. So if, with the adjustments we've made, it looks like the expenditure will be 11.2, which is almost 5,000 less, 500,000 less than the budget, and the revenue will be 11,174,000. I would like to point out that if you look at the revenue expenditures for 17 versus 15 and 16, remember that the CIP sales tax now goes into the general fund and then is transferred back out to the capital improvement fund. So it looks like we jumped from a $9 million budget to almost a $12 million budget, but remember the sales tax for CIP goes in the general fund and then it's transferred out. So that's part of the reason why I took a big jump.
So where did we miss the mark on the revenues? Is it the water, mostly the water issue?
I would
losing
have
those
to go through line item by line item,
Okay.
but clearly the water was one because of the adjustment to losing the 411 customers. Another one in Public Works was there was anticipation that we might get a contract with the city of Cole to do their water line maintenance, and that did not come through. So that $50,000 was not there.
Why didn't that come through? That's the first
They
one.
did not agree to it. Now, we are revisiting with, they've had some changes in city council, and we are revisiting that issue with them. I don't know that when the agreement with the school was signed, that $100,000 of potential water revenue and sewer revenue was backed out. So those are some of the easy ones. There was probably other ones as well. On the expenditure side, probably the biggest one was we underestimated overtime in police and fire. And if you say overtime's going to be $200,000 and you know it's going to be $300,000, you really haven't done yourself any favor. And it might look good on paper, but when the end of the year gets there, it's not going to add up.
Right.
But if you look at FY18, and we still got some more work to do, of course, but we're projecting right now revenues of $11,362,000 and expenditures of $11,452,000. That would still give us an unbalanced budget where we would be spending $90,000 more than we're taking in. But as we go through the 2018 budget, we will try to close that gap. I would also point out, if you look at the FY17, we're still projecting that we're going to spend $40,000 more than we take in. But remember, at mid-year, our projection without any adjustment was we'll spend $195,000 more than we took in. So we have made good progress, but we're not quite where we need to be, but we've made good progress. I would like to point out as we go through these budgets, it includes the $66,000 from the school next year to participate in the funding of 2 of the resource officers.
For 18, you mean?
For 18.
Right.
And it does not include any cost of living adjustments in pay or any merit or performance raises. have not calculated into the 18 budget yet.
So how do we trim that 90,000 away? How do we zero that? Or do you?
We'll look at different things. You might let us get through all this to show what we've done to date, and then we can address that. On the Public Works Authority, if the same format as before, and you can see in both 2015 and FY 2016, the last 2 years, we have spent more than we took in. So we've had a negative budget the last 2 years. When we did our mid-year review, we projected we would spend $312,000 more than we would take in revenue. With the adjustments that we're going to go over at the end of this, we've got that down to $148,000. And if you look at next year, with the school utility revenue in there, we would actually take in $88,000 more dollars than we spent. So it's not a lot, but it is a positive budget. Then if you look at the fire department, you can see in FY 2016, we spent $135,000 more than we took in. And remember, the fire department, a lot of their revenue is transfers from the general fund. So that's kind of a misnomer when you look at those, because it's always supplemented from the general fund. It doesn't make enough revenue to pay its own way. But with the adjustments that we're making with moving some additional dollars to general fund, our expenditures will zero out this year, and we were looking at a negative $125,000 budget, and next year it would zero out. But again, that's a function of how much we transfer in from the general fund, so that's a little misleading. The last sheet that I have, these are the realignments of personnel. Now, we made some other alignment or modifications too, but we wanted to go over the personnel actions that we are taking first. And before I go through these, I'd like to point out that the staff realignments were not unilateral decisions made in a vacuum by the city manager's office. Department heads and supervisors were actively involved in these decisions as to the adjustments we would make in staffing. And while nobody likes reductions or cutting back, for the most part, the departments have bought into this plan. And a lot of the things we're doing are things that were recommended by the various departments in an effort to reduce expenditures. We tried to do it through attrition, positions that we didn't have filled, that were vacant, just not fill those in the future. But we did have 4 reductions in staff through RIF. We have to remember as we look at this, there's no or little new money that we can project for 2018. I think we must continue to explore cost-cutting opportunities to save where we can, but we also need to explore opportunities to enhance our revenue stream. I talked about a tech fund on and court costs on municipal tickets. If a lot of towns do anywhere from $10 to $40 on a municipal ticket, it's called the tech fund to help pay for computers and software. if we did a $25, say we're in the middle instead of 10 or 40, we do a $25 fee, that would generate, if I remember off the top of my head, about $40,000 of revenue. If most cities now, court cost is $30, we're at 21. If we bump it up to 30, that would be another $15,000 to $20,000 of revenue. We also, as we lead up to the 2018 budget, we want to go back and look at all of our fees and see how we line up with other cities, because some of our fees we've not adjusted in significant time, like permits for garage sales and those kind of things. And some of them won't generate a lot of revenue, but we'll probably go through and look at all of our fees between now and the 18 budget and come to you and say, okay, here's where we're at, here's the last time we raised them, here's what those fees are in other communities, and see if we want to adjust any of those. But the adjustments that we made, if we want to walk through those, our Public Works Director is going to retire by the end of this fiscal year. We will be promoting our Street Superintendent to Public Works Director. The Executive Assistant, there's 2 Executive Assistants at Public Works. We will be moving one of those to the 3rd floor. And our plan is that we will be moving planning and building inspections to the 3rd floor, move the chamber to the 2nd floor, and tourism director, instead of having 2 admin assistants at City Hall, we'll go to 1 because we'll have the 3rd floor. The street department superintendent, we will not backfill that position with a superintendent, but fill it with an equipment operator at a much lower cost. So manpower will be the same, but it won't be a superintendent. The Public Works Director will run that crew. Fleet maintenance, there are 3 mechanics in the fleet maintenance. We eliminated we eliminated the mechanic helper's position.
Excuse me.
In the Parks Department, we had a maintenance worker that was an unfilled position. We are not going to fill that. Parks Department, the seasonal help, we have moved that this year and project to move it next year. There is roughly 1/3 of the motel tax set aside for parks. We are going to take the summer help for the Parks Department out of the motel tax. We did a RIF of the foreman at the cemetery, and we are transferring the building facility manager that's on the 3rd floor to parks, and that individual will work for the Parks Department the majority of the time, and then off-season do some building maintenance for us. Line maintenance, water line maintenance, there's an equipment operator that is an unfilled position. We will not be filling it. The superintendent or supervisor at the wastewater treatment plant is retiring, and that job will not be backfilled. The superintendent of the water treatment will both be over the water treatment and the wastewater.
And he'd be able to do that, you figure, huh?
Yes.
Okay.
The executive assistant that was on the 3rd floor, my executive assistant, we are moving to tourism director, so that will come out of the motel tax instead of the general fund. And we already talked about transferring the executive assistant from GPWA to admin. Building maintenance, we moved that position to the parks. Planning department, the planning coordinator position was eliminated. We are adding a planning director in lieu of a economic development position. Used to be economic development / city planner. We are just going to add a city planner. The building inspector.
Can you say that one again? I'm sorry.
We used to have a position that was both director of economic development
Which was
/
coding.
planning. Correct.
Right.
We are going to backfill that with just a city planner instead of a combo position.
And do we know who? We don't
No,
know.
we haven't advertised it
Okay.
yet. The building inspector plans to retire in December, and will work 3 days a week. And we plan to hire a new individual in as building inspector, because there's a series of licensing they have to get. We can work under the current building inspector's license until this person gets up to speed and passes all the tests for the different trades. But eventually, we'd like to have somebody in-house that would replace our building inspector when he finally decides to quit work. But I think he'll be with us at part-time for the next 2 to 3 years. Economic development, we're going to do a planner instead of economic developer, but we did also hire retail attractions to try to jumpstart our retail development. Police department, we have eliminated the code enforcement officer position, and we are combining that effort with the animal control. And so animal control will do both animal control and code enforcement. There is a vacant officer position in the police department. We have eliminated it, and we will be eliminating 3 firefighter positions. We'll be going from shifts of 9 to 8. So that's kind of a rundown of the personnel adjustments that we have made to get our budget more in line, so it matches our revenue. And then when you continue that for a full 12 months in 2018, will give us an opportunity to maybe have a more balanced budget in FY 2018.
Obviously, tough decision. Really tough. I don't quite understand all the mathematics here when we're talking about the impact on 2017. We're talking about 4 months worth. You would think it would be a factor of 3, then going to 12 months, but that doesn't calculate. What am I missing?
June, July, August, September.
Yeah.
Even June through September, right?
And it's 2468. 2468. It's 11 pay periods that we're calculating this on.
And also
For the rest of the
remember,
year.
some of those positions have been not filled for an extended period of time. And some of them were
So-
filled part of the year, so it's
So
not
some of
just
them,
a
it's not
simple
just a
nothing
4
question.
months, it's just not
Correct.
necessarily a 4-month savings
Correct.
in some instances, because
Correct.
they're already.
It just
been
depends
vacant.
when
they
during
wa-
the
when they
year
left.
that position went
Became
open.
vacant. Okay.
Some of them were filled recently, and some of them weren't filled for a more extended period of time. For
Okay.
example, the economic developer position has been open since December.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's part of the reason why it is just not a true mathematic equation.
Okay. And these actions have already been taken? Most of these?
The 4 reductions in force have been taken. Some of them, like our building inspector, will be retiring in December. Our public works director will be retiring at sometime between now and the end of September. So some of them are in play but have not occurred yet. City planner, of course, we've not filled that position, but we'll be advertising. So some of them, yes, have been implemented. Some of them will be implemented between now and the end of this calendar year.
husband's gonna have you running all over, you're not gonna be able to even get a breath, you have to go get a
Oh, I'm
part-time
gonna
job
be
to get
digging
away
in the
from it.
ground.
Questions, comments?
So, listen, I'd like to talk a little bit, and maybe this is more of this might go more to chief, because I think we did this on our watch, was going from the 5-day to the 4-day. Is that what catapulted us over the
For
overtime? Yeah.
No, overtime, what drove us primarily last year was we got 3 grant positions, 2 of those were filled in-house. And then when we hire an officer, if they're not certified, they're gonna go away to CLEAT for 17 weeks, then they're gonna come back here and they're gonna do 16 weeks in FTO. So you've got months invested in that officer before they're ever out on the street by themselves. We have a decent amount of turnover every year as it is. So last year, we averaged losing 5 officers a year. Last year, we lost 6 or 7, plus we filled 2 from inside the department. So that made 8 or 9 patrol spots open. And when you have that many spots open and the shifts, I mean, still need to be covered, it was a perfect storm for overtime.
So in a perfect scenario where there's not a lot of turnover, the 48-hour, because for the 4 12-hour shifts, 48 hours, automatically 8 hours overtime per man.
No.
No?
There are several different, there's more hours that you're paying for, but it's not overtime hours.
Okay.
Based
You do
on
3 days the next week.
Yes, they work 84 hours a week.
Oh, because it's a 2-week payroll that we're looking at.
Right,
Okay,
because
I
we
see
went
what
from
you're
a
saying.
1 week to a 2 week, so now they work 84 hours. They get extra pay for those 4 hours, but it's not overtime pay. That's an FLSA rule.
Okay.
That applies to emergency service personnel.
Okay. So it was just all about the perfect storm of just needing, having.
Well, it
decent
is,
hours,
but you're gonna have overtime every year regardless.
Right.
All the special events we have, and rest
Well,
at
sure.
the end of a shift, someone takes a vacation, someone calls in sick.
Yeah.
But last year, it was worse.
That is an interesting downside to the grant positions. I hadn't thought about that you've got all that training, especially if you hire from within.
Yes.
The replacement.
Because you don't.
The replacement cost, the training cost of new staff is always going to be a critical element.
Correct.
It probably didn't get any cheaper either. I'm sure it's gonna go on up. Nothing's cheap.
Well, no, nothing's cheap.
One thing that is going to be critical when we present the budget for FY 2018, and we present it as a balanced budget, of course, the budget document is a policy budget, or policy document, and the city council can adjust it as they see fit. But we would like to reiterate, for everything you put back in, you're gonna have to take something out.
Yeah, and that's why I was wondering, what would maybe we do need to look at, if we looked at increasing hotel motel tax, for example, is that something that can go right to the general fund?
Of course, it depends on your ballot question, but,
Typically it wouldn't, that would go
No,
towards CDB.
Right now, it's not set up that way.
you know, every city sets it up different. Some are more general in their description on the use of the revenue. In our particular case, our ballot question, other than there was a 5% fee that went to the general fund, and then once you subtracted that off the top, 2/3 went to tourism development and 1/3 to parks improvements. There are towns that, when they adopt it, it goes to the general fund. There's some that use it for their economic development program. So it varies from town to town, but it depends. You gotta go back to your organic document that created it, the ballot question.
And the way that's set up right now,
No.
that.
And I don't know if you did an increase, if you could have a separate arrangement committing the funds for the additional tax or not.
Probably could. If you did the ballot title, if you raised it.
So if the additional 2% could be earmarked for a different purpose than the original for example.
Yeah, it could be maybe for planning / economic development,
Correct.
which would probably pass. The economic development's a big talk around here.
Well, it's going to be a key issue for us. We're going to have to grow our tax base.
Exactly.
Yes.
For us to achieve what we want as a community and to provide the services that we want to provide. We can't continue to live off the same revenue as expenses go up.
Well, Ed, you're just gonna have to write some checks, man. Oh, no.
You print them.
Leroy, what are some things that you see that we can do to increase that revenue? I mean, aside from having more people move in, what do you see as the cheap way that we can attack
Well,
the problem?
I think the first thing is to look at our user fees and make sure that those that are consuming services that are traditionally paid for from user fees are paying a fee that pays for those services. So if you look at all of our fees, what are they in other towns? Are we so much cheaper than other towns, or are we right on the mark? We'll need to do a study, so we'll take all of our fee schedules and then we'll look and see what other towns charge for those fees. Not that it dictates to us we have to charge as much or as little as another town, but at least it provides a frame of reference.
Right.
And we'll look to see if any of those fees need to be adjusted and what revenue that would. We talked about on municipal tickets, a lot of towns have now went to a technology fee on the ticket of $10 to $45. That when you pay your municipal ticket goes to technology fund, court costs. Most cities now are at 30, we're still at 21. That would generate some additional revenue. With the loss of the amount of money from transferring the 400 plus water customers, building a new wastewater treatment plant, at some point we're going to have to reevaluate our utility fees and see if those, I mean, that is an enterprise fund, and you normally or typically cities run enterprise funds that like a business, and you don't supplement that with sales tax. You charge adequate amount of fees like you would a business to pay for its operation, and we may have to reevaluate our utility fees. Are we charging what it takes to run the water, wastewater utilities?
Yeah, and that's the conundrum. And ever since I've been here, that's what it seems, that it has to be on the back of the people, and that's kind of, I would like to see some other economic development opportunities that would increase revenue versus having to necessarily do it on you and I. That's all.
But then
That's
again,
what
we're talking about
possible.
user fees. I mean, you don't want to give it away either.
No, I'm not, no, you gotta increase, you gotta do
And if we're
what's
not
fair on
paying
that.
for it right now, then we're giving it away.
Right, you gotta do
Yeah.
what's fair on those, no question.
Also impact fees for both load on sewer, load on water, you know, when we
Correct.
tie into
Right,
it, so
right.
there's a lot of
But,
impact.
but we also, the problem is it's not an immediate result, but we, you know, with the full-time tourism director, we want to continue to grow. Tourism is a big sector of our economy, and by going with a full-time tourism director, we want to continue to grow the tourism in our community, to grow that sector of our economy, and we will continue to make an effort to recruit new industry and retail. There's not a tremendous amount of retail development as there were 10, 12 years ago, but we will be pursuing those. And every time you can add a retail store or restaurant, then that's additional sales tax money that is a benefit to us.
Yeah, big time.
So probably the only new money we will spend next year is if there's an opportunity to enhance our academic development efforts.
I don't want to change the subject at all, but I do want to ask this question. Do we have any kind of a number on what kind of an impact our tourism really has on our community?
I don't have it tonight, but there are some reports that give indicators, but you have to remember that those are estimates. I don't know that it's an exact science, but there are some indicators that are generally accepted in the industry, things that can show what impact tourism has. And
People have asked me that, is tourism really that important to Guthrie anymore? And to me, I think yes it is, but I don't know how to answer that. That's why I'm asking the
Well,
question.
we'll try to get some documentation. Remember, it's not a hard science, it is a projection, but there are some generally accepted methodologies to do those projections. And we'll try to
Well,
get some-
statewide, it's the third revenue generator, third highest revenue generator behind oil, gas, and agriculture. Second, and then third is tourism. And Guthrie certainly reflects that, I would think.
I would think so too. I
in
just was
So-
wondering if we had any kind of a figure. So,
We will get you some
And,
information on that.
and the more stuff that retail attractions does, if we could get a Buffalo Wild Wings or a Chili's and, a Lowe's or a Home Depot, and all of a sudden, we're making all kinds of coin. Now your tourism efforts are gonna really pay off, because they're gonna be visiting those places also.
Correct.
It's kinda like that corridor on Covell, where they're not just building that hotel, but then there's a crest coming up there and
Yes.
all kinds of stuff. That stuff is massive.
Blowing up.
Massive revenue comes out of that.
The problem you have is retail development can take anywhere from 2 to 3 years from the time you start until it happens. And it's not an immediate return.
and it's not as much of a return as you get out of industrial development.
Well, industrial development is
Jobs.
great because it's the base job, or what a lot of people used to just say basic industry. If you don't have those kind of jobs, you're not bringing new money into the community. Problem is, cities do not get any of the property taxes off of a new industry. From a tax standpoint, when you increase the new industry, the tax base increases, but that goes to the school, to the county, to career tech or VOTech, because they get property taxes. Indirectly, it helps the city because the more people you have working here cashing their check, then they're going to spend more at your retailers. The city is predominantly funded from sales tax, so the direct benefit to us on the academic development side is retailers that charge sales tax, because that goes direct into our funding to operate the city. But industrial development does help, and it is a necessary element to grow your economy.
So it's all about the tax.
And rooftops, the more rooftops you have.
Well, the more you
spend
grow
money, the more tax you make.
your tax
The more.
base, the greater your economy is going.
Need a little more hail
A
coming
little
in.
bit more hair, we'll have more rooftop.
There you go.
You can
Well-
make that amount, I tell you.
Well, I think the other thing that's important to note here is that, well, obviously, our target is a balanced budget.
And the unbalancing of our budget over the last couple of years, it's gonna take some time to get back into that balance too. But a balanced budget isn't the same, or an unbalanced budget isn't the same as meaning that you're bankrupt. We still have money in the bank to pay the
Correct.
bills.
Correct.
And that's a crucial distinction, I think, to make. Obviously, we want a balanced budget, but we still have money to pay. The city is not going bankrupt. But we can't continue on the trend that we've been on for the last few months.
Well, and we can't continue on the trend of council thinking that there's $1 million in a rainy day fund when we're 200,000 short. Okay, we can't continue on that path at all. We have to know, because that directly affects decisions that you make, or at least that I make, that I vote on. It impacts them in a huge way. Because now, if you look at, I mean, we're talking about putting 100-some thousand in the rainy day fund here, right? Over the course of fiscal of FY18, I believe, something like that, right?
And the public works rainy day.
Yeah, Public Works, but nothing in the city Guthrie one?
No, the general fund one, no.
See? And so, but we have an ordinance in play that we've reduced that down to, okay, if we could just get $1 million in there, then we don't have to do all this worrying about robbing Peter to pay Paul to put in the general fund. Well, we thought we had that, but we don't.
Yeah.
So we're 200 grand short on that. And
And I just want to,
a bummer.
the money was moved from general fund through a budget amendment that was approved by council. I can't tell you when that was done, but it was done sometime in fiscal year 16.
Right.
The reason for it was because the money was in the cash account of general fund since 2014, 2013, and the project just kept getting pushed and pushed and pushed. And, you know, as long as all the same players stay in all the same seats, no problem. But if any changes ever took place, that money would disappear. That $200,000 would be gone, it would be spent, because it wasn't earmarked anywhere. It's just, oh yeah, we have to remember.
It loses its identity
Yeah.
in the general fund.
Yeah, we
It
have to
may have
remember.
been better to transfer it to the grant fund instead of the stabilization fund.
well,
Because it
right,
could've
but
gone-
again, but
But if it goes into the stabilization fund, it can't be touched. And-
Right. I
and the-
understand
And the
that.
stabilization fund does allow for grant matches. And that, I think that was, that was the understanding. If we put it in the stabilization fund, then you can use it to match your grants. But you have to have a minimum balance in there of $1 million before you can go in and do that. But that was the main reason, was we need to move it out of the general fund or it's gonna be spent.
yeah, and all I'm saying is
I
I think that
remember
we need to
us
be aware of what those
Yeah, the
type
most-
transactions, that's all.
Well, we are trying to make sure you're aware of all the details.
Appreciate that.
Because now we can't get any grants because we're 200,000 short in the general fund, I mean in the rainy day fund, right? So we have to have $1 million in there to start going for the grants. And so now how are we gonna ever get there when we're doing a streetscape?
Well, it depends on what the grant is.
Yeah.
Some grants can be matched with capital improvement sales tax funds, if it's a capital improvement, so it depends on what type of grant it is.
Well, and then again, we had $1 million, it's only because of the match that we don't have it, so.
Correct.
Say it again.
So you,
Well, if it's
We had
committed,
$1 million
if it's committed to
in
the
there.
match.
Yeah.
so-
oh, 900, we're $5,000 short.
Right.
We have $1 million, it's only because of the match that we don't have it.
Right, but I guess where I'm going is this council didn't know that that's how that $1 million got there. This council didn't know that. Serena, before Bruce, didn't transfer money out of the general fund into the rainy day fund. Okay, so then we found all that money and transferred it over. We assumed as a council, we had $995,000 in there, and there was 200-some thousand from Mumford sitting over here, not in there. That's all I'm saying. So then we make a decision to do a streetscape project with $200,000, but had we known that it was in that $995,000, would we have made that decision? Maybe not. That's all I'm saying.
To reiterate what the mayor says, of course, you do have money in the stabilization fund, you do have money in the CIP capital improvement sales tax fund. The the city is not bankrupt. The economy is a very vibrant economy still. It's just that our expenditures have been outpacing or outgrowing our revenue, and we need to do an adjustment to one, get back within our revenue sources, and then we need to look at opportunities to enhance that revenue in the future.
My next question would be, the reason for the shortfall is, at least from my understanding, is increased expenses, the same expenses, they've just increased, and that's what's like the deal with the police, you know, it's something that can't be helped, it's just an expense that increased. It's not like the city council or anybody else said, okay, well, let's spend an extra $1 million over here that we don't have. It's not, it wasn't a responsible, there's nobody really
But there was some loss of revenue with the water, which
Right.
was an absolute wonderful thing to do.
Because
It's
it Millie
just,
did,
you know,
yeah.
solving that issue
Yeah.
that had been over this council, and with the partnership with Rural Water for 10 years, was the right thing to do.
Right.
The two hidden expenses were the expenses of the meters and then the loss of that revenue of the 400+ customers. That was a revenue loss.
But the majority of it is simply, you can't continue to operate on the same revenue if your expenses are going up. And
But
everybody
what I'm getting at is, that's what's happening.
That's
The
the
expenses
majority.
are going up. It's not like the mayor or somebody made a motion that we spend an extra $500,000 on something.
We didn't add a bunch of additional staff or new programs. A lot of it is the fact that if your revenue stream is not growing, but your cost is growing, you will get in this situation. Now,
Okay, that's what I was trying to find out.
then it is, there are some factors beyond our control. The lawsuit was the rural water and settling it and giving up 400+ water customers. That's beyond our control. Some things were within the city's control. Foregoing $100,000 of revenue of utilities to assist a school. You know, that was a choice made by city government to do that.
Now, my understanding, we did that 1 year, right?
It is the agreement's not clear, but probably at
Yeah,
our
right.
next meeting, we will have an action item to terminate that agreement.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Yeah.
And that was because
I
previously we
I
had
think
so
the
much
water
money
thing,
in
Jim,
the
I think
budget
the
to be able
school
to
is
do that.
Right.
accepting
What I
this.
understood too.
So the smoke and mirrors from the previous budget.
Oh, yeah, I understand that. It was
Move
bad.
money here, move money there.
Yeah. it was
And
just-
I'm not saying that in any way to be derogatory towards the school district, because having a quality school district is one of the most decided assets you gotta have to grow your economy.
Yeah, so it's all a double-edged sword. That's why we need Buffalo Wild Wings, we need
That was all-
Chili's,
like that
we need-
Buffalo.
That was all approved
Lowe's.
prior to the bond issue going through anyway, wasn't it?
When do you open?
I don't know the timing exactly since I wasn't here, but it was done last budget cycle.
Yeah, I remember when we did
Was it prior to the bond, school bond?
that.
No.
Right
No, it was after.
Right.
I'm sorry, what was
That's when
when we gave the
the
money?
state said that
Yeah.
the school wasn't gonna have enough money to operate, and couldn't do a lot of things.
It's been right about a year, I
It was
think.
kind of
It
a.
has.
But remember, the school's just like
Previous
us.
manager said we had money.
Their money's in different pockets.
Pull monies from here to there. and
So the
stuff.
bond money really doesn't help them from an operating
That's why we're
standpoint.
in the red.
The bond money only helps them from the construction.
Yeah, to build the school.
facility. Didn't help them on their operating budget.
But then we're donating the resource officers over there too, another 60-some thousand a year,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Which will also be another action item or not?
It's all in one agreement.
Was it one agreement? I thought that was a separate deal.
No, it's in one agreement.
Remember when we gave the utilities because they're going to lose 2 teachers if we didn't step up?
Something like that,
Yeah.
We're not totally where we need to be yet,
Yeah,
but
maybe it
we're a
was
lot
3
closer.
teachers.
Moving in the right direction. Okay, any other questions? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Double the hotel.